Well, hello. We've got a special show today on Mental Fitness Fridays. My pal Peter Hobler is going to be with us. Uh, he is a co-host of mine. This is a shameless plug now. Uh, he and I and three others are part of a podcast called the X-Men Roundtable. And Peter told us a pretty impressive story. I'm not going to give away uh, any details here, but I thought I would give him the honor of doing that himself. So, Peter, come aboard. Hello, hello.
Hello. Awesome to be here, Larry. Great to see you.
Great, great. So, yeah, it was, yesterday, we didn't even record that. Dang. Um, but yeah, during our meeting slash podcast session, right at the end, you dropped what I thought was a kind of an emotional bombshell, uh, um, reading a letter, and I was wondering if you could sort of recreate the experience for us. Uh, you had there was a letter involved, um, but yeah, why don't you give us some backstory and then the front story?
Absolutely, because this has really affected me, and this just happened on Monday this week. So it's only been 3 days, but it's really affected me. Been doing a lot of reflecting. So, Larry, I've been talking a lot with a young man, younger than me anyway, who was the bass player in my brother Chris's band. The band was called Sonic Joyride, and we're going back to the early '90s, right? So my brother's story is pretty amazing, and my brother was living his dream of playing music. He had a band. He was the lead singer. He wrote all the music. He was the lead guitarist. And the band, this is way back before social media, the band was trying to figure out how to put themselves out there. So my brother Chris came up with a pretty amazing concept. The band purchased a used full-size school bus and retrofitted it. They put a stage on top with a ladder on back to get up there. And the stage was probably 2 feet deep, but had a lid. So the drums would be up there, all the plugs for the instruments. They'd open the top, then the inside top open became a screen for slides, for videos. They had a 2,000 watt system in the belly of the bus, and they had waterproof doors with built-in speakers on the right side of the bus. They named it the Cosmic Sled. And they would go on these national tours, and they could pull up and within 10 minutes be performing anywhere. And the sound was of such a high quality, it was better than most of the gigs, the places where they were performing inside. And they started making some pretty good progress. They'd go cross country. They actually made the headlines, the front page, the San Francisco Chronicle, and they're a band from a little town in New Hampshire. They were being played on over 300 college stations and other stations. And in the interim, my brother met his true love. And 5 or 6 years later, they get married. Chris was able to buy 9 acres in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire. It had a little barn. The band soundproofed the barn, and it became their creative, a mecca of a creative practice space. And the hayloft became the office for their record company, Anomaly Records. The band's making all this progress. My brother gets married. He and his wife, Jennifer, start having a family. So far, it's a story of passion, true love, growing a family, and the band's starting to make pretty good inroads on success. When Chris starts having trouble with his voice. Fast forward about a year and a half, he's diagnosed, and I'm with him for the 10 hours he's at the hospital here in St. Louis. He's diagnosed with ALS. One of the most heinous diseases you can get. And for those of you that don't know what ALS is, it stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It steals your physical abilities.
It's Lou Gehrig's disease, right? Is that the other name for it?
Disease, right. So my brother's voice was his first thing to go. He's the lead singer in his band. Tragic. Over the next 3.5 years, he starts losing his ability to move. Within about 2.5 years, he can only move from the neck up and he can no longer speak. He finds a software program designed by the astrophysicist Stephen Hawking's students Stephen Hawking had ALS as well. And this program was called Dasher. So my brother, every morning, his wife would put a little silver dot on his forehead. It had a scanner at the top of his computer screen. So he could do anything you or I could do on the computer, write music. He actually wrote some legislation to the Missouri State Legislative Branch to incent investments in neurological disease research. Well, along the way, my brother starts one charity, Hope Happens for Neurological Disorders. And then he meets with the head of neurology at Washington University School of Medicine. And he starts the Hope Center for Neurological Disorders, which today has over 130 labs, each one's a different disease, ALS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and I mean, it goes on and on. Things you've never heard of, things I've never heard of. So I've stayed in touch with my sister-in-law, and this last Monday, Rick, the bass player, and I had just a three-way conversation with Jen, and we just wanted to pick her brain to get memories and stories and different things. Well, we had an incredible hour and 10-minute conversation. I have like 6 pages of notes that I took from this call. An hour and a half after the call, Jen sends me an email, which is what I read to you and the roundtable Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to share what it is because it sets the tone, which is a little bit of a lead-in, if you will, for everything. So let me just read this to everyone. So
please.
I sort of look away. Dear Peter, something in our conversation today, maybe Rick saying how well-behaved Sonic Joyride was on tour as compared to stories you hear about bands trashing hotel rooms, having lots of drugs and alcohol around, triggered this memory. Watching ER on TV in our Thorndale Drive house, which is here in St. Louis, just Chris and I. He is in his chair, and I am as close as I can get to him on a nearby couch. I had loved that show for years, while Chris probably hadn't watched it before he had ALS, because at night, normally, he would be rehearsing or out performing. But now we watch everything and anything we can together because it's easy, and the shows are 1,000% better when you're watching them with Chris. It was a sad episode. I remember when Dr. Green is leaving the hospital. I think he's dying, actually. And he and Noah Wiley's younger doctor character are shooting hoops behind the ER. Dr. Green passes the ball to younger doctor, says something, then turns and walks off screen. And that is the last we see him alive. The camera might have turned to Noah Wiley standing there, holding the ball, watching his role model disappear into the shadows. I could not, however, make out what it is that Dr. Green says as he passes the ball. I rewound and listened. Chris looks at me like, why aren't we finishing the episode? I tell him I can't tell what Dr. Green says that I want to know. Chris says something. I rewind and play again. He speaks so fast, I still don't get it. Chris repeats what he said seconds before. I can't tell what Chris is saying either. I rewind again and again, and Chris looks increasingly frustrated because he has been telling me what Dr. Green said, and I am too impatient to hear him. After an embarrassing amount of rewinds, I realize I'm an idiot, and I turn and look right at Chris, and now, because I am paying attention to the right things, he becomes much less frustrated, and I can make out very clearly what he has been saying, what Dr. Green was saying, which is set the tone. Set the tone. Set the tone in your work, your home, your life. It seems prophetic years later. Chris set a really impressive tone in all dealings, and I am inspired when I think of him. So simple. Set the tone. The golden rule. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Approach with love and curiosity. Be welcoming. Be joyful. Be goofy. Encourage your loved ones. Never be mean or sarcastic. And that, Larry, it has had me reflecting on my brother, who was my best friend. He was 8 years younger, passed away 2005. So next month is 19 years. And I've been reflecting on myself, how I've lived my life, how I want to live my life. And what an incredible story from my sister-in-law, and what an incredible motto, way to
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
3 simple
Yeah.
words, set the tone.
You know, this is the third time I've heard you read that letter, and I'm still getting misty. Just think, it really hits at the core of what it simplifies what I've been working on for at least the last year. And it's like, shit, there goes my job. I mean, his letter does it so much simpler.
Well, I don't know about that. There's so much to it. My brother was an exceptional human being, an exceptional man, friend, father, husband, obviously. And it was the day before we had our three-way conversation. She and I talked for a little over half an hour and caught up. But Jen and my brother had 4 kids. The youngest was 1 year old when Chris passed away. The oldest was 5. The oldest 5. He's now 24, and Aiden and I are very close. But Jen actually said to me in our one-on-one conversation, I just said, share with me your thoughts about Chris. And she started it by saying, Chris was the greatest person I've ever known.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So he obviously was living what sounded like a really rewarding life up until the ALS kicked in. How was he dealing with life after, as the symptoms were coming on?
Well, that's a great question, Larry. And here's what made my brother so exceptional. And I actually ran the public charity Hope Happens for neurological disorders that my brother started. Hope Happens raises awareness and funds for neurological disease research. Most of that funding raised subsequently went to the Hope Center for Neurological Disorders at Washington University School of Medicine. But most people, when they're diagnosed with ALS, they feel they lose who they are. They pretty much climb into a hole and never come out. They don't want to go in public. They don't want to put themselves out. I was with my brother the day he was diagnosed at Barnes Jewish Hospital here. I remember the doctor's name and everything. And after 10 hours of testing, the doctor walks in and simply looks at my brother and says, Chris, you have ALS. There's nothing you're going to do. You need to go back to your home in Connecticut and get ready to die. I looked at the doctor and said, excuse me, doctor, my brother does not live in Connecticut. He lives in New Hampshire. Bedside manner was terrible. The next 3 days, and a very important part, our maternal grandfather also had ALS. He was diagnosed at age 70, died at 85. My brother was diagnosed at age 35, died at 39. Huge difference. So my brother wanted to understand why there was nothing different in the realm of research for ALS in the 35 years since our grandfather had been diagnosed. And it turns out there was no profit motive because everybody died from the disease. So my brother took the profit motive out. All he cared about was figuring out how to extend lives or find a cure. First for ALS, but then through collaborative research, all these other diseases. Maybe if the approach, the findings, the results, the outcome of research on ALS didn't help ALS, it might help somebody with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, whatever. So my brother, 3 days after his diagnosis, came flying up out of his hole and committed his life to that cause, to that mission. And I've never seen anybody so committed. The last song his band, Sonic Joy, recorded, they were never able to do the lyrics. It was called 15 Minutes. And I've been trying to find the words, the lyrics to that song, and I can't. But on the CD it's on, you hear Chris in his very raspy, hard to understand ALS voice saying, I never had a chance to record it, but someday I will. And he believed that with all his heart and soul. It did not happen, but somehow, some way, I believe his music will still get out there, and his voice is being heard through the Hope Center for Neurological Disorders. But it was the most incredible example I've ever seen. He could use the dot on his forehead in his computer, to write out sentences. The computer would speak it. He could pick what type of voice he wanted. He actually had one of his caregivers who was pretty technical on Chris's wheelchair. He had speakers put up in the back. He had a swivel tray that his computer was on. So he'd walk into a room, and I have still all this recorded. A foghorn would start going out, and it would say something like, "Captain ALS has arrived." Or when he left, "Captain ALS has left the building." So he always had a sense of humor, which blew my mind. And the way he connected with people before ALS, during ALS, even at the end, was mind-blowing. But it was so emotional for all of us. I mean, especially his wife, Jen, but for all of our family to see Chris, who was skin and bones at the end, which is how our grandfather had been, and how my brother, when he was about 8 years old, remembered my grandfather. And it was pretty ironic, Larry. My brother's biggest fear in life, after seeing our grandfather, when Chris was so young, in bed, not able to speak, not able to move, connected to a feeding tube, Chris's biggest fear was getting a feeding tube. And the day he was told he had to get a feeding tube was his last full day on earth. But set the tone. My brother, 18 and a half years later after he died, through the efforts of the Hope Center and some other people outside of it, but because of my brother's vision, the first ever drug for ALS was approved by the FDA last April 2020.
Wow.
So my brother's legacy still continues.
Lives on.
And I mean, he achieved more in a very different way after he was diagnosed with ALS. Music up until that point, afterwards, what he founded, his vision, is still impacting lives all over the world. He truly set the tone.
Beautiful.
And I realized, I'm a lot older than my brother was when he passed away. He was 39. I'm a little older than that, but it's time for me to get clarity, which you hear me talk about a lot in our roundtable calls. It's time for me to get true clarity for myself, for my vision, my mission for the rest of my life. And a lot of it has to do with my brother. And I'm not going to share a whole lot else about that because it's under wraps for a little bit, but set the tone.
Yeah, totally.
Figure out what that means for you and go. And I know with what you're doing here on your Mental Fitness Fridays and everything else you're doing, to me, in my own words, that's really what you're doing. You're helping people set the tone for their lives, what they want to achieve, what they want to accomplish in their careers, with their families, with their husband, wife, whomever. And I applaud that. I'm very grateful for you helping people become who they want to be, become more, become better. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. And right back at you, man. Between you and the other guys from the X-Men, and I really appreciate what you're doing as well. And especially now with this, I feel like there's two of you now, with you and Chris. So thanks so much. Guys, actually, and people listening and watching, if they're inspired, how can they find you?
Wow, great question. I would think the best way to find me, because I do all sorts of things too. I'm actually not on Facebook a whole lot. So send me an email. If you want to reach out, have a discussion, whatever, send me an email to peter@innercircle.com. Peter, Inner, I-N-N-E-R, the word circle.com. And Inner Circle was one of my brother's songs. That's where that comes from.
Oh, nice. All right.
Thank you,
Peter, thanks so much. I got chills all over again. So, thanks again. And guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I don't know how to say it any better. Set the tone. All right. I'll see you next week at this time on Mental Fitness Fridays. Thanks, Peter.